2003 Porsche Cayenne S rear brake replacement. I'm Brian Essett from How To Automotive, and I'm going to walk you through that process. So we're going to get started by removing one of the lug nuts and screwing in this. It's called a wheel stud pilot tool. If you don't have it, you can do it without it, but it makes life easier. So it looks like this. It's just a stud. Screws into where the lug nut went. The reason why is because Porsche has these lug stud style, so when you remove all the lug nuts, the wheel likes to fall off. And it's a pretty heavy thing to try to catch and balance all at the same time. So if you put this wheel stud on, and then you remove all the rest of the lug nuts, and even if the wheel was to fall off, it would catch it by the stud. So now you can slide it off. I have a full review of that in another video. I'll put a link in the description for it. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take two pry bars like so, and put them in between the brake pads like that, and pry the brake pads back. Now, before we do that, actually, you want to remove a little bit of the brake fluid from the master cylinder, because this will push the fluid back inside. And if you do it this way, you don't have to bleed the brakes after you're done, but if you open the bleeder screws for any reason, you'll have to bleed the brakes after you're done. So after getting the brake pads pushed back from the pistons, now on the inside of the caliper here, there's a little, on this pin that runs across, there's a cotter pin that you need to remove. And once you remove the cotter pin, you're going to push down on this spring with one finger and push this pin inwards towards the inside of the car and push it and remove the pin. And then you'll remove the brake pads itself. So this is what the clip looked like I used with my needle. I just pulled them out with my needle nose. So I had to drive the pin out with a Phillips screwdriver and just pushed it through as I pushed in with this. I pushed it with one hand, I pushed in, and the other hand I pushed the pin out. So this is what the pin looks like. We're going to clean this up and put a little lube on it before we put it back in. So we pull the screwdriver out now. Now what we need to do to actually get the pads out is we need to, on the back side is the wiring connector for the pad lining center. So here you're going to push in with one hand, and this little tab right here on the end, you're going to pry it back towards you and pull out. And there's the little tab I was referring to. So now that that's out, we also want to take this little ear and pry the wire out of that, and then set this spring aside. One of the things I wanted to mention is that spring has a pretty good amount of tension on it, so you have to really pry on it pretty hard. Okay, the next step we need to do is right here where this ABS sensor is going in. It has a little it's rubber mounted. It's mounted in this loom. We need to pry that out with a little screwdriver so we can get to the bolt right here. It's in the way of the bolt, so we need to get this out of the way a little bit. So the bolts on the back are these 16mm star sockets. They're like 12 point. They're not your normal ones, so they're kind of special sockets just for Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche. They use these a lot. So it's 16mm the one. So once you get that little grommet out of the way, so now the grommet's out of the way, you can see, you can put that in there. And you can either use a breaker bar and break it free, or if you can get your impact gun, get your impact gun in here and run the nut out. And then there'll be another one just a little lower right here, right there. So you'll take both of those out, and then the caliper will come off. And we're just going to take it off and set it on top of our suspension. Okay, now that our caliper is out, sitting on top of the suspension and out of the way, we need to get the rotor off. So you're going to need a T50 Torx bit and an impact screwdriver like so, and you're going to strike the end of this with a hammer, and it's going to spin the nut out for you. Then you just slide the rotor off, and that's it. So now you're going to put your new rotor on. And this is the park brake shoes inside, so you want to check the thickness and make sure that they're in good shape, which they're not a very wearable item, so they're usually in pretty good shape unless somebody leaves the brake on. And then this is the adjustment screw, so if you put your rotor on and it's loose, you need to adjust this, pull it back off, adjust it a few clicks, slide it back on, and then recheck it until it has a light drag on it. And once you got the drag set up where it's nice and like a nice easy little drag on it, then you know you got the park brake shoes adjusted properly. Then you can go ahead and put the little nut back on. Okay, now that we got our new rotor on and our e-brake adjusted, one of the tips I wanted to share with you guys is not to touch the surface of the brake pad, rotors or the new brake pads with your fingers or get any grease prints or anything on it. Getting grease on the fingerprints on the rotors and stuff has been known to create squeaks. So the less you can touch the surface, the better. And if you happen to touch it, you know, you can make sure you clean it off maybe with some soap and water or brake clean or something like that. All right, so now that we got that done, it's time to put the caliper back on. So we're gonna flip our caliper back around and bolt it back on. And so we can put our bolts back in it. Before we get too carried away, before you on the little bolt that holds the rotor on, you want to put a little blue Loctite on the threads and put that in and bolt that down too. And then on the caliper bolts itself, you want to put the blue Loctite on the bolts. It's like our thread sealer, whatever you want to call it, but you want to put some on there. And it's like they don't have lock washers, so this glue prevents the bolts from vibrating back out and loosening up. So. Okay, now that our caliper's all bolted up, we need to do a little prep work on the pads before we install them. So on the back of the brake pads here, we're going to put a little Seal Glide brake grease, Caliper Grease. It's just special design grease to help aid in stopping squeaks. So we're going to put a thin layer on each one of the pads, and a little bit on the slide where it slides in them, and a little bit where it rides. Be very careful not to get any on the front surface of the brake pad. So now that we got our brake pads prepped, we're going to slide those into the caliper until they're fully seated, and you'll see the pinholes are lined up all the way through. So once you do that, the next step is to take our spring here that holds the brake pads in, and with the little eyelid down right here, with that facing downwards. So you're going to put that in and push in with one thumb and drive this in, the pin in, and put the pin all the way through. And also keep in mind to keep our pinhole lined up at the top, because our cotter pin's going to go through. So you're going to push with one hand, like so, push the spring in and then push it in. Sometimes you can use a little hammer or whatever and tap it through until it fully seats. Okay, now that our pin and our anti-rattle clip is all the way on, we're going to put our safety clip back in, or cotter pin back in. We'll put it back in through the hole, push it in, and lock it in. So if you forget to put that in, this pin could walk its way out and the brake pads could fall out, and that would be bad. So now after that, we're going to reinstall our brake pad lining sensors. So our sensors look like this. So the red on this one, the red one, it's got the single wire, and this one here has got the two wires going into it. The one with the two is the inner pad, and the one with the single wire is the outer pad. So we're going to start by putting the outer pad in first, and you'll use the thick side goes towards the inside of the rotor. So you line them up like so, and you take a flat blade screwdriver and you push them into the pad, top and bottom, and then route it on the bottom of the clip. Make sure you put the wire through, route the wire through the little slot in the caliper, and then you take the little ear lid and plug it back in. So you just line up the shape and plug it in and listen for the click. Now you're ready to put your wheel back on and torque the wheels down. And before you test drive it, you want to pump the brake pedal until you get a firm pedal. And if you open up the bleeder screws to get the pistons back in, you'll have to bleed the brakes after now. But if you just push the pistons in without opening the screws up, like I showed you in the video, you won't have to bleed the brakes. Just pump the pedal. I'm Brian Esser from How To Automotive, and I'd like to thank you guys for watching my videos, and encourage you to subscribe for more valuable videos. Thank you.